I guess it's live. I can't really tell this new platform. So I'm going to assume that we are live at this point in time. Glad you all could join me this afternoon or whatever time you might be looking at this, wherever you're at. I'm going to get right into it. You hear me talk. I'm passionate about the treatment and the survival and the growth of male sexual abuse survivors. And, I'm not excluding women, but I'm one that works with a lot of men, and men have nowhere to go. And you often hear me talk about how incompetent a lot of therapists are. And, it can sound pretty judgmental, but the fact is that it is really true because a lot of therapists, they got the academia down. They got the book smarts down. They got all that. But when it comes to working with male sexual abuse survivors, a lot of them are just absolutely clueless. You can't treat them like your everyday cookie cutter person that walks into your office. I've sat in front of 100, 150, 200 therapists. We've talked about this. They all admit we don't know how to deal with them. So you hear me talk about it all the time. But what happened yesterday, it was good. My psychiatrist, and he's been my psychiatrist now for 12 years. He knows what I do. He supports what I do. He believes in me and he believes in my mission. And he sent me something in the mail. He goes, Randy, I thought you would be able to relate to this. And it was an article out of the, let me get it right. I want to say the right one. It was an article out of the Psychiatric Times. And there's two psychiatrists, mental health workers, psychiatrists that wrote this. And they're both female, okay? There's very few male that I'm aware of that do work with sexual abuse survivors. Most of them are male or female. I'm not saying there's none, but just my experience, right? And it's Dr. Joan M. Cook, PhD, and Amy N. Ellis, PhD. It's a really good article. And where it really caught my attention was when it starts talking about supporting male survivors of sexual abuse. I'm going to do a lot of reading from this because it's just easier to. They're saying the same thing that I'm saying when they're actually giving you some vignettes of it. It's not enough to have a kind and caring non-judgmental therapist. That's not enough. It's not enough just to have a safe place to go to. What they say is that a mental health clinician who works with a sexual abuse survivor should have the knowledge and skills to understand and help patients who have been abused. For example, some well-intentioned providers may discourage their male patients from talking about their traumatic experiences. They may inaccurately think that talking about such experiences will open up Pandora's box, or they themselves may be uncomfortable hearing details of the abuse. There's a lot right there that's really good what they're saying. And this is why it's important to have a competent person that you can work with, because they can open up a Pandora's box. It's more than likely going to get opened up in one or two seconds. I don't think it's avoidable. But the key is, can you close that Pandora's box before the patient or before the client walks out the door? And that's where people lack skill. Many times in my therapy, we opened up a lot of Pandora's boxes, and it was hard. And I ran a business, and I can remember walking out the door. Now you want me to go run my business? She goes, you'll be fine. Because she always closed me up. She always ended it on a positive note. My belief is if you're going to open somebody up, don't leave them opened up when they leave their office. Don't be looking at the clock and say, well, it's been an hour, see you later, goodbye. I'm sorry, your door open now. We can't do that. We've got to give them tools, and we've got to be able to close that wound back up so that they can at least operate out in the real world. So it can create that Pandora's box, open it up. As long as we can close them up, it's okay. And the last part's really key, because when I was taking psychology for my AA at College of the Desert, this is just for the AA. Almost every class, it was drilled into you that if you have your own unresolved issues, you need to resolve them. You can't help people if you're still hurt. This is serious business. This is a healing ministry, and it's called the healing ministry for a reason, because we're hoping, not helping, but we're doing everything we can to heal people. The last thing I want to do is tear somebody open and hurt them and have them do something dumb. They know when they leave me, call me if you need me. I'm here for you. I was telling before, I just let them know what's happening. So if you got, and I say it all the time, it's even in one of my presentations, if you got your own unresolved issues around this kind of stuff, whether it's sexual, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, please, until you've done your own work and you have healed yourself, and it's a lifetime journey of healing, I understand that, but until you've got to the point where you can sit down with a client and listen to them and understand them without being triggered, don't try to help those kind of clients. It goes on, it says, while it may be upsetting for the patient, working through the trauma narrative in a process-oriented or formalized exposure-based manner is tremendously helpful. We have to talk about it. We don't have to get into graphic details, but nobody's let us talk about it for most of our lives. We've been shunned. If it wasn't verbally, openly, it was because of societal rules for men. It's just the way it is. As a therapist, as a life coach, as a mentor, they have to tell their story. They've never told it before. So it's a great way to heal. It goes on to say, many patients tell us that the more they talk about it, the less impact the abuse has on them. And those discussions of the traumatic event, including details, no matter how graphic, can allow survivors to understand and process what happened. When you're holding it inside of you and you cannot talk about it, you can't process it. And you have to process it with somebody that's going to listen to you without an interruption, without telling you you're stupid, without telling you you're going to burn in hell, without being negative of any kind. And let them express it, and then give them ways that they can work out of it. It's not going to happen overnight. People often ask me, Randy, how long do I got to keep talking about this? Until you don't, and you'll know. And you'll know. Okay? This isn't an easy thing to overcome for men, especially for men. And it's not an easy thing to overcome for women at all. So we've got to be patient with our clients. It's one of those things that just takes time. And for me, I'm not so much concerned with money. I'm more concerned about making sure that these men can have a better life. And yes, it's tiring and it's wearing on you. I'm not going to argue that point. But the rewards are well worth it to me. And it says, we have also worked with male survivors. This one is a little bit, this really frosts my butt. We've also worked with male survivors who have told us that their therapists seem inappropriate, well, it's this one and the next one, inappropriately voyeuristic, wanting explicit details of the abuse, and appeared excited and eager to hear more, which felt like being abused all over. That is wrong. That is wrong. Be voyeuristic about helping a survivor is, they ought to have their license removed. Because it's not right. Because they are being abused again. It's all over again. To force somebody to talk about the events that happened to them is absurd. Don't ever do that. Everybody we talk to, if I'm speaking somewhere or whatever, if somebody comes up to me and they start talking to me and say, Randy, I've never told anybody, it could be man or woman, I've never told anybody, Randy, but it happened to me too. And hearing your story gives me a lot of courage and hope that I can move forward. And we might have a little conversation at that point in time and says, look, when you're ready, here's my card, give me a call, and we can sit down and talk, and we can see if we can move forward. When they're ready, even my therapist in my treatment, I was with her for 7 years, twice a week, right? Even she would not push me. She always, we would go and we would open up some stuff, and then when it would get too hard, I would say, Deborah, we got to change the subject. I can't do this right now. It's too much for me. And she respected that. To try to push your client into telling them stuff you want to hear is so hurtful, so unethical, and so immoral. See, it says, others have told us stories of therapists grimacing, and this is grimacing in disgust or pain, or communicating an inability to hear the patient's stories, all of which perpetuates shame and silence. Sorry about that. When a client, when you're opening up to somebody, and you're talking, and it can get, sometimes it's pretty bad, and you grimace, or you pull away, or I can't take this, or whatever that is. They've been hearing that all their life. That's the worst thing you can do. Deborah, my therapist, was the greatest at this. She just sat there and she took notes. My spiritual counselor, Betty Ford, the same thing. My counselor, all my counselors, they would just sit there and let me tell my story. It's that simple. It's nothing really hard. Just listen and take notes. Pay attention to what they're saying. Hear what they're really trying to tell you. Again, if you haven't worked through this stuff, and you got these underlying issues that are unresolved, please resolve your own issues before you try to help somebody else. Because these are the kind of things that happen to me. Here's another one. After disclosing the pain of the traumatic experiences, some survivors were met with intensive, inaccurate, victim-blaming, and dismissive reactions. It says one patient told us that when he told his therapist that he needed to talk about the sexual abuse he had experienced, the response was, and this guy should have lost his license on the spot. I hope you're not one of those homosexuals who are going to waste my time telling me about imagined sexual abuse. I'm telling you, man, that hurts. That really, really hurts. That therapist should no longer be in business. Period. End of conversation. You don't treat people like that. Imagined sexual abuse? Come on. Don't tell me you're one of those homosexuals who are going to waste my time. For God's sake, people. What are you even doing in the healing field? By reinforcing the patient's belief that he was a severely flawed human being, and that's what that guy just did. You're a homosexual. You're severely flawed. The comment kept him from seeking help for many, many years. One person can send a survivor back into depths of isolation and darkness that they'll never come out of again. One person saying the wrong thing. One well-intentioned person without the knowledge, the wisdom, or the strength, or the know-how to work with a survivor. Yeah, I'm mad because this is what I do. I have a passion. I'm compassionate about this. People do not want to believe survivors. They'll turn their back on it, like they got some kind of leprosy or disease. It's not us that have the disease or the leprosy, it's the perpetrators. You come sit down and listen and just be quiet and listen to some of the survivor stories. And then tell me you're going to walk out of there not believing them. That you're going to walk out of there going, my God, we got to help these people. Or not. See, this isn't the survivor's problem alone. It's a we problem. Only we can resolve it. It has to start in our homes. Generational curse handed down from generation to generation to generation. And what people are worried about is two things. People are too worried about money. Hey, do not say nothing to anybody about this because that trust fund is like a year or two away from you. And if you say something, grandma will yank that trust fund from you. Who cares? Because that child's life, if it doesn't get help, it's going to be ruined. How about if we start speaking up? Let's help that child. Let's start changing the paradigm of the world where we help the child become a healthier person. And then the families can start getting help as well. You know how many people that I see and I hear and on Facebook, I'm watching stuff that are don't you dare talk to me about God, Randy. Do not talk to me about God. No God would do this. A loving, kind, caring God would never do such a thing as this. I fully understand. Look, I was there for 38 years. And I want you to hear me. You need to pass this on to your friends. It's your duty as a Christian, as a believer, to pass this on to your friends. And then just, you've done your job, right? God did not abuse him. Period. In the conversation. Man abused him. God gives man free will. Man's going to do what he wants. God's a gentleman. If you really sit down and look at your story, which I love to do with people, we'll find out how many times God was in your corner when that was happening. But just trying to get them to that point where they want to talk about God is hard. It's the first question I ask when I sit down with people that I'm unfamiliar with. It's like, where do you stand with God? I just want to know for myself. I'm not going to preach to you. I'm not going to shove it down your throat. That's not my job. Therapists, people. I appreciate the article that these two wrote. Again, it's out of the Psychiatric Times, okay? My psychiatrist, Dr. Bassinelli here in the desert, who's been my psychiatrist for 12 years, like I said, he supports me. He knows what I'm doing is helpful. He likes what I'm doing. Matter of fact, he read my book and he got a lot of information for himself out of that book. He's the one that sent me this article saying, I think you'd be interested in what this has to say. And he was right. Because right there, and that's just part of this, right? That's just part of this. Is everything I've been saying for the last 10 years about how therapists are incompetent. Again, not all therapists. There are a few out there. A lot of therapists are incompetent and do not have the skills to work in male survivors. Period. And I might get a lot of hate mail. That's good. Bring it on. Let's talk. Because I don't care if you got a PhD or not. Because the PhD is just a piece of paper. What's your life experience? To me, that's what people need to hear. Yeah, we use our education to find ways that we can work with them. But the key is life experience. I don't have a PhD, but I have a PhD in a lot of subjects in life. But I have a PhD that a lot of people do not have. Right? And I don't wish people to have it either, because it's not easy to get. Right? I think there was one more thing in here I just want to touch on real quick. This is barriers to treatment. It says all kinds of male rape myths are responsible for delayed treatment, seeking, and perpetrating stigma. So why didn't you say something? Why didn't you get help? Right? And there's a table here. It says the most prominent barriers to receiving mental health services in an adult trauma survivors are commonly related to stigma, shame, and rejection, low mental health literacy, lack of knowledge, and treatment-related doubts, fear of negative social consequences, and limited resources. And that is very true. There's a very, very limited amount of resources for male sexual abuse. And some of these myths that are around is that men cannot be forced to have sex against their will. Look, we're talking boys here. We're talking young, and men can't be forced, but they can get drugged up and pinned down by a gang, and sorry, it's going to happen. But the fact is that any individual can be forced to have sex against their will. If someone does not want to have sex or is not able to give fully informed consent, then they are being forced or coerced into unwanted sexual activity. If you are drunk, if you are high, you cannot give consent. A no is a no. I don't care how drunk or how high you are. The other myth is men are less affected by sexual assault than women. Men are just as affected by sexual assault as women, although it may be expressed differently. So one's not greater than the other. We both have our own. Women are affected just as much in their way, and men are affected just as much as women in their way. And it doesn't matter if it happened once or if it happened several times over a period of time. It seems like the effects are pretty much the same straight across the board. Men who become sexually aroused or have an erection when assaulted must have wanted it or enjoyed it. Many men have experienced unwanted or unintentional arousal during a sexual assault, as men often get erections in painful or traumatic situations. Arousal from abuse can be confusing for survivors of assault, but like our heartbeat, physiological reactions like erections are often outside our control. Right there's a perfect language. Physiological reactions like erections are often outside our control. God made us with these certain physiological aspects. We're touched in a certain way, in a certain area. Our body doesn't know if we're being raped, molested, or it's actual love. And it's like I say, it's out of our control. A man cannot be raped by a woman. I've seen more men that were raped by women as children, so screwed up as an adult. They want nothing to do with women. And I'm telling you, and more times I've seen these men that were raped by or molested by women more messed up than men that were molested by men. It says that men can be raped by women. This type of crime is often underreported due to gender stereotypes. Any unwanted sexual contact is sexual assault regardless of gender. Men can, in fact, be made to penetrate and force into oral sex, among other things. There was a guy that told a story, and he was they're teenage girls, neighborhood girls. They were pretty good looking, and he was a younger kid. He was in his 8, 19 years old, and they were in their teens. And one day he's walking out, and this is a true story. They got him in the garage, and they both did him on a table, and he was petrified, and he walked out of there not knowing what hit him. It just destroyed him as a man. It sounds weird. Because, hey, high five, man, you're the kid of the neighborhood. But no, it's far from that. And lastly, and then we'll say goodbye, people become LGBTQ when they are abused by someone of the same sex. While abuse is prevalent in the sexual and gender minority community, is most often the result of stigma and prejudice against a person who already identifies or is labeled to be different than the accepted sexual orientation or assigned gender identity. So those are some myths and some facts, along with what I've talked about for the last 10 years, and it's just affirmation for me that to hear two, not psychologists, but psychiatrists, okay, say the exact same thing with examples, real life examples of what they're talking about. And I've ran across myself people that have not trusted therapists or people or healing people because of what's been done to them in the past. So please, I'm gonna put this video up on YouTube this afternoon. what I would like to do is see you all share it. I'd like to see you go to my YouTube channel. I'd like to see you like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just take it, it's a quick clip, 10 seconds, and boom, you subscribe. And it doesn't cost you nothing, but it's going to help out my foundation, the Courageous Healers Foundation. It's going to help out tremendously. So if you like this, please click like, share, and if you want, leave a comment, which I know, Lauren, you did. So I'm glad you joined me this afternoon. All right, everybody, remember, nobody tells you they love you today. Randy does, but more importantly, yeah, you know, God loves you. Be blessed, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.